On this episode of Newt's World, in the new film, The Elephant in the Room, a proud progressive woman thinks she's found the perfect guy until she learns he voted for President Trump. Can their relationship survive their political differences? The film stars Alyssa Lamperis as Leah, Sean Clare as her love interest Vincent, and Dominic Burgess, Leah's roommate Martin. The Elephant in the Room is a scripted comedy that explores the challenges of political polarization in a lighthearted and human way. Here to discuss his new film, I'm really pleased to welcome my guest, writer, director, Eric Bork. He is an Emmy Award-winning writer-producer of the HBO series Band of Brothers. Eric, welcome, and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
How did you get your start in film and television production?
You know, Tom Hanks really gave me my start. The short version is I grew up in Ohio, went to film school, then moved out to Los Angeles and got a job working as an assistant in the offices of various people at one of the studios. Fox Studios eventually led to a temp assignment in Tom Hanks's little production company at the time. That turned into a permanent assistant position during which I was answering the phone and, he was shooting Forrest Gump. I was writing scripts on the side, and eventually he read some of my scripts. It was kind of a fairy tale story and offered me a promotion, which led to helping him write and produce the miniseries From the Earth to the Moon, which was about the Apollo program for HBO. And then a couple years later, Band of Brothers, and a lot of other projects that didn't get produced that I worked as a writer for and with him.
When you did Band of Brothers, how accurate historically was it?
Well, I think it's pretty accurate by Hollywood standards. I mean, Tom was interviewed about that and joked that, most Hollywood productions of history are 12% accurate, and if we're 17% accurate, we'll be hailed as heroes. I think he said something like that. I mean, I think we did better than that, but, we relied on Stephen Ambrose's book and the interviews he had done with the veterans of Easy Company, as well as our own interviews with the veterans, many of whom were still alive at the time. Of course, when you're writing a scripted television or film, you have to make it comprehensible to an audience, which sometimes means consolidating characters and events. And of course, you're making up all the dialogue because you don't know what they said. They don't remember. That's not in the book. So, you have the broad strokes of what happened. Then you have to fill in a lot of blanks in order to write these scenes and turn them into episodes. So we had to do that normal thing. But I think we were trying to be very accurate and faithful to their stories while doing that, maybe more so than some World War II productions have been. But I don't want to say it's hard to compare.
It's quite a break to have somebody of the stature of Tom Hanks, in a sense, take you under his wing. What advice do you have for young people in college or just out of college who dream of working in film or television?
Well, I think what I did is a pretty good model. Like, if you want to be a writer, that's one very specific path. There are other paths, but as a screenwriter, working as an assistant, those jobs can be competitive too. An office assistant within the industry in Los Angeles is a kind of tried and true method. Trying to get on a television show as a writer's assistant is a really good method as well. But, if you want to be a director, the advice would be a bit different. It'd be make your own films, make anything you can. As a writer, you're writing scripts and you're trying to meet people who will read your scripts and sort of trying to network in that way. But it's a world where you don't have to live in LA anymore, but it still helps. So I definitely do recommend that for people if it's something that they can feasibly do.
From Band of Brothers to The Elephant in the Room is a really big shift in topics. Your new film, The Elephant in the Room, is described as a red-blue rom-com. At the heart of the film, you explore whether a relationship can work across the political divide. How did the idea for this story first come to you?
Well, around 2016, like a lot of people, I started to become more and more aware of political polarization as what seemed to be a societal problem. And at the same time, I was looking for ideas for stories for a project that I could write and direct on a low budget, which I've been sort of wanting to do that for about 5 years and had written a few different scripts. as someone interested in romantic comedy, I know that the key to a romantic comedy is what's in the way of the relationship. There needs to be something big in the way that the audience roots for the couple to solve, but that isn't easily solved. And so around 2016, I started thinking, in today's day and age, political views could be that thing, opposing political views, because of just how extreme it's become. So I just started playing with an idea for a script in which that was the issue, while at the same time being interested in polarization as an issue and hoping that the resulting movie, if I was able to raise the money and get it made, would somehow explore that in a fresh way that might be disarming for people.
Why did you pick comedy, a romantic comedy?
Well, I'm a comedy person despite Band of Brothers. I mean, the funny thing about the scripts Tom Hanks had read when he offered me my promotion were comedy scripts for TV shows like Friends and Frasier, which I had written to show that I could write comedy. They weren't actually ever produced, but that's what you did as a writer, is you wrote sample episodes of existing shows. So I was always trying to write comedy, and Tom offered me these incredible opportunities on these historical dramas. So I wrote quite a few of those kinds of projects, but I always wanted to come back to comedy. And I always was writing comedy on my own on the side. And romantic comedy is one type of comedy among others, but I've always been interested in kind of smart comedies with heart more than any other type of film. So it was a natural for me to be looking for ideas in that realm, that this political topic became kind of the latest idea.
I was very struck with, I think it's called The Death of Stalin, which is a dark comedy about literally the day he dies. All of it dealt with as humor. And the guys who did it said it was such a horrifying topic that they thought comedy was the only way an audience could stick with it, that otherwise they'd be so turned off they wouldn't watch the movie.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. And political arguments are also something people probably don't want to tune in to watch on movies and TV. But when it's done in a heartfelt comedy where you're not taking it all quite so seriously, you know, it's kind of like candy to help the medicine go down, I suppose. Not that it's medicine, but it's a topic that's, like you said, not easy to watch and maybe the kind of thing we want to escape from because we have it in our personal lives and we don't enjoy it.
Doesn't it become more complicated when you did it the way you do, which is to make it a romantic comedy? Do you have the dual tension?
Yeah, I think that's something screenwriters do, is like we look for really unsolvable problems to put characters in because that's where the drama and the comedy can come from. Yeah, it's hard. The thing about romantic comedy is you generally want the audience to root for both of the people and like both of them, which could be hard to do if one of them is politically opposed to you as an audience member. So one of my challenges was to try to create two characters that people on all sides of the political spectrum would like and even emotionally bond with and root for, and even root for them to maybe get with the person of opposite views, while recognizing the two characters as believable versions of people with those views. So those were the biggest challenges really in the writing and even in the editing of the movie, to try to like strike that balance.
So in that context, though, given the normal biases of Hollywood, how do you ensure that both characters' perspectives are represented with authenticity and respect and keep it balanced and not sort of inevitably have it slide into sort of an anti-Trump, just given the nature of Hollywood?
Yeah, well, I mean, not easy. And I came more from the left for sure. And so it was easier for me to write the character that was on the left, which was the main character, the female. Although I had a close friend who was a Trump supporter in 2016 that we began discussing, and I began getting his views. And even if they didn't change my mind on issues, they helped me write a character that, like him, was complicated. Because the thing about polarization is it tells us that people on the other side are all one way and they're all one extreme thing that we should hate or fear or feel as evil or stupid. And in real life, it's much more complicated than that. And I'm much more interested in the nuance and the gray area than the binary black and white choices. So it was a combination of knowing someone like that and being naturally curious as a writer and as a person in terms of what makes someone with different views on certain issues have those views, and being curious and open to that. But also I found some organizations and nonprofits that are focused on polarization that help support the film and gave me notes on the script to help me flesh out the Trump voting character that was less something I related to or understood in a way that would hopefully be believable and dimensional and likable. It's up to the viewer whether I achieve that or not, but that was the goal.
curious, a Gallup poll in 2024 found that a record high 80% of U.S. adults believe that Americans are greatly divided on core values. There was a Pew Research poll a year later that found that 8 in 10 say Republicans and Democrats not only disagree on policies, they can't even agree on basic facts. Why do you think we have this profound divide right now in this country?
Well, I'm a writer and a film person and definitely an amateur on politics, but my personal opinion is that the incentive structure in politics and in much of the media today rewards polarization, and that from a political viewpoint or from a media viewpoint, it's easier to get votes and clicks and viewers by riling up the emotions of your side. And you do that by demonizing the other side and by constantly spewing, you could say, stories that are meant to make you fear and loathe the other side even more than you already do, which I think a lot of both political leaders and media outlets are doing on both sides. And as someone who's always been more on the left, I've really tried to identify to what extent am I in a echo chamber myself and work to not be in one. Even if I think I agree with these people on this side, how do I make sure that I'm not just being led by people that want me to believe all one way in a very binary way? So I think it's helpful to do that, but it's not easy because it's easier to be in a tribe of people that you feel like these are my people. I agree with them. They're the right side. They're the moral side. And it's not fun to cross over and hear the arguments from the other side.
In some ways, it'd be easier to do a diatribe either way. You could do a right-wing assault or a left-wing assault, and it'd be easier. You really have a remarkable career. For somebody who's interested in this, how does a film project like this go from conception through production to marketing? It's a very complicated system.
It is. And when you're operating on a ultra low budget like we were, and you don't have the backing of a Netflix or a Disney or a Paramount or some big company, it starts with fundraising. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. Some people just go after high net worth individuals in their network who might want to put money into a film, which is a pretty risky investment. For me, I used a crowdfunding platform similar to a Kickstarter, only instead of donations, people can become part of the movie as investors. I used a site called WeFunder, which apparently was made possible by a law passed during the Obama administration where investors of as little as $100 can become investors in a startup company or a film. So this website attracts amateur and professional investors who want to get in on sometimes a very low level on various companies. And there are some films on there that had raised $200,000-$300,000. So I used that site, and it took a while and it wasn't easy to try to raise money. And then I also found these nonprofits that were interested in polarization and thought the film was helpful for that cause. There have been a lot of documentaries on the topic, but they felt that documentaries can sometimes preach to the choir, and they thought a scripted romantic comedy might touch people in a new way or reach more people. So I got some funding there from grants and donations from nonprofits and individuals. So put those two things together and found enough money to start pre-production, and worked with a union of actors, SAG-AFTRA, to get a contract with them at a certain budget level so that I could hire professional actors who are members of the union, which was definitely necessary in my view. And then putting together the crew and doing all the things you do on a low budget film where you're wearing a lot of different hats and you're trying to do it at a low budget level in order to be able to make it for the money that we raised in terms of locations and number of crew members and number of shooting days. It's a movie that could all be shot in one house with mainly 3 actors, which makes it cheaper. Because it was set during the pandemic, it was also believable that these people are just hanging out in this one house and they're not going on dates in restaurants and bars, which makes it cheaper. And then eventually finishing the movie, looking for distribution. That's a whole other conversation, which we can get into if you'd like, on what the options are for independent films to reach the marketplace and reach viewers.
Well, because do you start marketing it before the film is done, or do you wait until you have something to show people?
I waited till after. I mean, some people do a lot of social media marketing all the way through. I wasn't really that savvy on social media, so I wasn't building a huge social media following during production and so forth. I pretty much waited until we had a finished film and then looked for distribution and found an independent producer's rep that could present the film to various distribution companies. And I found one that was interested, one for American rights, one for international rights, and both of them work and getting the film out there. But for independent films these days, it's very hard to get a theatrical release, and it's very hard to get on Netflix or Hulu or HBO Max because they're not really licensing independent films that don't have major stars. Our film has working actors you've probably seen in things, but it doesn't have major stars in it. So most films at this level end up on the pay-to-rent, pay-to-buy platforms like Amazon and Apple and Google Play, which the film is now on. It was released this month on those platforms. And then maybe later on the ad-supported free services like Tubi, which it will probably be on after a while. And then, you try to make deals with foreign distributors in various countries for whatever rights they want for their territories, which we have a sales agent off doing that separately and reporting back how many deals they can find. And that's ongoing as well.
So when you start, if I understand you correctly, in the case of this film, you would start on sort of a rental basis where the film's there. In order to see it, people pay some modest amount, and then they have access for 2 days or 3 days or something. Or they could buy it, in which case they have it permanently. Can people go to Amazon, or where do they go?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon or the Apple Store or iTunes Store or the Google Play or YouTube where they have movies for rent. So it's up on all those platforms to rent or buy.
And if somebody pays whatever the amount is, does a part of that go back to Google or Apple, and then a part of it goes to you?
Yeah, Google or Apple or Amazon withholds a certain percentage. I think Amazon withholds 50%, which is higher than the others. But with Amazon, you maybe get a boost in terms of their algorithms and the film being discoverable by more people. So there's sort of an incentive there to be on Amazon. But yes, they withhold a portion, and then some goes to the aggregator service that gets it on the platforms. Some goes to the distributor that worked with the aggregator, and then some comes back to the film, which then distributes it to investors to help the investors recoup on their investment.
I've written a fair number of books, and we have a pretty standard rule of thumb that you have to spend as much time marketing the book as you spend writing it. Is that your sense that now it's done, you have a whole additional cycle of getting people to watch it?
For sure, and that cycle has just begun for us. And the other thing is, ideally, in a movie, you spend as much money marketing it as you did making it, which can be millions and millions of dollars, not in our case. And one of the challenges with independent films is often you raise only enough to make the movie and finish the movie, but not a lot for marketing, which was certainly what's happened with us as well, where we had a modest amount in order to hire a publicist for a short time, in order to have a paid social media team. But if we had lots more money, we would do probably more ads on Facebook and Instagram and maybe YouTube, paid ads. But as for right now, we're basically doing organic social media as well as publicity to get interviews and articles and reviews and stuff. The big Hollywood movies obviously do billboards and they do TV commercials and stuff like that too. But on the independent level, you normally don't have the budget for that. But it would be great to have that because that's really how you get a lot of eyeballs.
Does word of mouth help?
I think word of mouth helps a lot. I mean, if people like the movie and they tell their friends and they even write a little review on Amazon or IMDb after they've watched it, I think with a film like this, that probably can help a lot. Obviously, if they post on social media and have a lot of followers, all those things help. I can't tell you I know exactly the key because it's my first time doing it and we're still in the very early days, but certainly I have to think that if people love it and find it unique and worth watching and tell people about it, that can make a big difference.
Eric, I understand you have a unique marketing strategy using a series of screenings. How does that work?
Well, one of the ways to get the film out there is to have people watch it in person, which of course is always lovely as a filmmaker to see the film projected in front of an actual audience that gathers for that purpose. Even when you're not in theaters, there are ways to do it that documentaries often do called impact screenings or community screenings where they pitch the film to college groups or nonprofits who might want to hold get-together events where they host the film, screen it, and then discuss it afterwards. And what we've noticed is this movie creates a lot of discussion. People are really eager to talk about it afterwards because the issue of political polarization is impacting most people's lives, families, etc. And so it leads to a lot of engaged discussion. So even though it's not a documentary, some of the people involved in partnering with me on the film have said they think it could do well in that environment where it could be hosted and be a community screening and discussion afterwards. So we are starting to do that. We are starting to pitch it to groups and to campuses and political science professors, centers for the study of, American civic discourse, things like that you'll see at universities. We screened at a Jewish community center in Manhattan a couple of weeks ago. That was great. So there is a way to host screenings as well on the website for the film. You can fill out a form.
So if somebody's interested, they can go to elephantintheroomfilm.com, and there's a place where they can apply to host a screening.
To host a screening, absolutely, yeah.
When you sit down and think through this whole project, how many days do you allocate for shooting?
18, which is not many.
As I understand it, there's a term, making the day, which means you got everything done that day that you'd scheduled. Have you laid that out before you start shooting? Do you have each of the 18 days laid out?
Oh, 100%. It's all mapped out, and you're shooting it out of order, which makes it kind of crazy and difficult too. Like, for instance, our first day of shooting, you shoot out one set or one location and then move to another one. Now, we were all in the same house the whole time, but there were a bunch of scenes that happened in the entryway of the house at the front door. And those scenes happen in various places throughout the film. Mostly it's like this guy is coming over. He's coming over for some kind of date or conversation or event. He keeps coming over. So every time he comes over, they're both in different wardrobe. It's a different day. They have different emotions, but we're shooting all of those on the first day of shooting because we're going to light that area. The lighting is what takes so much time. So the lighting crew, the camera crew doesn't want to have to go back and relight the same area on a different day. So we do everything that happens in the entryway on day one, then everything that happens in the kitchen on like day 2, 3, and 4. And so you're shooting it so out of order. The actors have to be really able to put themselves in the mindset of where's my character at this point in the movie for this scene we're about to do.
I was just thinking that you're asking them to have totally different moments. They're not growing to them. They're not building to them. It's just action now. I guess that's why it's called acting.
And that's one of the things that makes professional actors amazing is that they have the ability to do that. And they have the ability to be kind of playful and spontaneous in the moment and make each take also feel brand new, because that's the other thing is you shoot many takes and then the same scene from different angles and many takes from each angle. It could easily get stale or repetitive. And a good actor, which I was blessed to have, they can just be so loose that each time they do it, it's like they're doing it for the first time, although they're also integrating directions that I've given them as well from what I've seen before and still making it feel like it's a real moment that they're having that they've never had before.
This is what, about a 1.5-year project?
More like 3 to 4 when you count the first writing and all the fundraising, which took 1.5 years or 2 years. Yeah.
Are you now totally focused on marketing, or are you beginning to think about the next project?
I'm mostly focused on marketing. I always have a script I'm working on. It's kind of like almost daily hygiene as a writer. You have at least an hour a day on something or even less. So I try to keep to that, but it's harder when I am having all the work of trying to get the movie out there and all the concern and emotion about the ups and downs from day to day of how's it doing and are people reviewing it or whatever. So far, so good, though. It's been getting positive reviews and feedback.
Are you inclined to stay with comedy for your next movie, or are you thinking about a different genre?
I pretty much always write comedy, things that have some kind of comedic aspect. I mean, there's all different kinds of comedy. So I do kind of, I would say, grounded character-based comedy. Some people might call this movie more of a dramedy. I noticed on Amazon, I think it's very funny, but there's some scenes that aren't funny, but there's kind of comedy laced throughout. I think Amazon was interesting, the descriptions that they put on it when they posted it. It's like comedy, but then it said heavy and psychological. Like, who wants to watch a heavy comedy? And what makes a comedy heavy? I don't think it's heavy at all. I think it's light, but it's a heavy topic. So I get what they mean, because some people want to watch a movie that doesn't have a heavy topic, comedy with a light topic, right? But this isn't exactly that.
We have this interestingly complex new world where there are more and more distribution points and more systems of distribution, from the old time opening in a big theater through all these various new cable systems to streaming. Do you think that creates greater opportunity for independent films or a greater challenge because you're surrounded by all this noise?
I think it's both. I think there's a greater opportunity and ease to make creative content because anyone can do it. It's really democratized and lowered the price and the barrier to entry to produce something. But yes, you have to break through the noise, and there's more noise than ever and more outlets. I've heard people say for independent film and maybe for filmmaking and creative people in general, writers, directors, etc., it's the easiest time to make something and the hardest time to sell it. Meaning it's harder than ever, arguably, to make money back, to make your budget back, to have your investors recoup whatever, because right now people don't think you should have to pay to watch a movie. Right? And I'm the same way. You know, if it's not on Netflix or HBO Max or something I've already paid to subscribe to, why do they want another $4? That's crazy. I'm already paying for movies, right? Even though we all know that many, if not most of the best movies, certainly new releases, aren't on any of those services, we still tend to just want to watch at home, meaning we don't go to a theater, and watch on a service we already pay for. So people aren't renting and buying movies as much as they used to, or going to theaters as much. And so it's harder because you end up having to find creative other ways for the film to be a viable business proposition.
You're really in an intriguing business. And I like the degree to which you really combine all of it. I mean, from the writing to the production to the directing to marketing. I mean, you're sort of a one-person company in that sense in terms of your range of responsibilities, a perfectly entrepreneurial sort of thing. I want to thank you for joining me. Your new film, The Elephant in the Room, is available now on all the streaming platforms, including Apple, Google Play, Amazon, Vimeo, and YouTube. And the easiest way for our listeners to access it is by going to elephantintheroomfilm.com and clicking on the Watch tab at the top of the page. And I look forward, when your next film is done, to have you come back and share with us again.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to my guest, Eric Bork. You can learn more about his film, The Elephant in the Room, on our show page at newtsworld.com. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. And our guest producer is Lily Haley. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Penley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcast and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Right now, listeners of Newt's World can sign up for my 3 free weekly columns at gingrich360.com/newsletter. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.